My name is Dr. Michelle Brown, and this presentation is on StoryBabies, the development of a website to support book reading with babies. And I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners and custodians of the lands on which Charles Sturt is located, and pay my respects to their elders past, present, and emerging future elders. I'd also like to acknowledge and pay my respects to our Australian Indigenous colleagues and peers who are present today. This research was funded by a Charles Sturt University Senior Research Fellowship awarded to Professor Sharynne McLeod and a postdoctoral research scholarship awarded to myself. Article 13 from the Convention of the Rights of the Child says that children have the right to freedom of expression, and Article 29 says the development of the child's personality, talents, and mental and physical abilities to their fullest potential. And we know that we can support children to have that freedom of expression and to reach their fullest potential through communication. And when I'm talking about communication here, I'm talking about verbal communication as well as written communication. And to do that, we know that children need to be able to learn to read and write. They need those literacy skills to support them in reaching their fullest potential so that they can actively participate in society. We know that the journey to reading to write begins for children during infancy and through storybook reading with children. We know that storybook reading sets children up for success with mastering literacy, and that literacy in turn has lifelong implications. We know that literacy is a powerful predictor of later life outcomes, including academic achievement, and that's not just within the school years, but for tertiary education as well. And then this flows on to employment opportunities and then quality of life and mental health. So we all know that book reading with children is important and that it has this lifelong impact and supports them in that ability to actively participate in everyday activities. We also know that book reading with infants and children involves many people, and that it's not just a one-person show, but that we're working together with a common goal, and we work as a team to support children to learn to read and to write. And involved in that team are the caregivers, the mothers, the fathers, the grandparents, the nannies, the child champions who are supporting the child every single day and are reading with them for multiple purposes, sometimes to support their language and literacy, sometimes for parent-child bonding, and sometimes to explain a particular activity or to explain emotions as well. We know that books are great for supporting children with that as well. We have the early childhood educators and teachers who are supporting and educating our children right from infancy, in the toddler years, at preschool, and as well as at primary school when they're doing that formal instruction of literacy acquisition. We then have the speech pathologists like myself, and we're here really to support you guys with supporting your child with book reading and with literacy and writing. We have librarians and library officers, and they really know about books. They're the experts when it comes to books and about the authors and how they can support us with knowing where to find the books that we need and that are most enjoyable for our children. And there are a number of other health professionals as well who are key players and supportive in supporting our children with learning to read and to write. We know that there are a number of fantastic initiatives in Australia and around the world to support families and professionals with book reading with children. Within Australia, there's Let's Read, there's First Five Forever, there's Better Beginnings, there's numerous different resources available to families, which is fantastic and highlights the importance that we all have for book reading with children. StoryBabies was created because we know that book reading with children in infancy, that first 2 years of life from birth to 2 years, is a particularly salient age in terms of their neural development. And we want to capitalize on that neural plasticity and development that's happening, that foundation of language skills, so that we can support children with their language, social communication, and later literacy acquisition. We also know that book reading with babies is very different to reading with preschool children or with primary school children, and that's because reading with babies and toddlers, they use more non-verbal communication. They are more passive in the reading interaction, whereas preschool children and primary school children will quite happily converse with you, answer questions, ask numerous questions. Meanwhile, babies and toddlers can be less talkative but still engage just as much with nonverbal communication. And that's why we wanted to support and empower families, educators, and other professionals with storybook reading through a free online resource. We also wanted this resource to be evidence-based and to focus on the research that we have learned over the 7 years we have been researching early storybook reading with babies. And that led to the StoryBabies website. We also wanted this to be freely available so that it didn't create any barriers to people, and for it to be online so that it was accessible to everyone as well. So that led to the development of the StoryBabies website. And as I mentioned before, it had 7 years of amalgamated research, so it is very much founded in research. The first study, we looked at parents' perspectives towards and practices towards early storybook reading, and we were really interested here in what parents are already doing really well to support their children with book reading. And we know that around 76% of parents read with their child from birth, which is fantastic. And the parents provided really honest and important information to guide us about what are the barriers, the things that are making it difficult for them to read books with their babies and toddlers, as well as what are the facilitators, what are things that they find that they're doing really well and that they don't need further support with because they've actually really got that. They know what to do in that space. That then led to the development of an early storybook reading intervention for babies, for parents who had babies. And what we found was that parents responded really positively towards the intervention. In fact, many of them kept in touch with us well beyond when the intervention finished, and not just for a couple of months, for a couple of years after, and let us know the impact that the intervention had, not only for the child that we saw, but for later siblings as well. In terms of the children's language and social communication skills, we found that the program had an impact in terms of a significant impact with a large effect size in terms of the children's language and social communication skills immediately after the program, as well as when the child turned 2 years of age. So this told us that the program was effective not only immediately, so there was a rapid improvement, but that this was maintained over time. Well, up until the child was 2 years of age. We then also wanted to have a look at children who we knew were at risk or more vulnerable to language difficulties. And we know that hearing loss is the most common disability in the newborn population. So we thought this would be a good opportunity for us to find out their parents' perspectives on early storybook reading of parents who have children with a hearing loss. And what we found is that their perspectives on early storybook reading were very similar to the perspectives of parents who had children who didn't have a hearing loss. We then provided parents who had a baby with a hearing loss with an early storybook reading intervention. And once again, this was very favorably received, and the parents provided very positive feedback in terms of the program. It was also fantastic in terms of the children's language and social communication skills, particularly their eye contact and the children's turn taking, which significantly improved with a large effect size for all of the children. So a great outcome in terms of social communication skills. At this point, we had a good idea that this program was effective for children in terms of supporting their language and social communication development, and that it supported children up until 2 years of age and provided a good foundation for both language and social communication development. However, we know that language development continues well beyond 2 years of age, and we wanted to also have a look at the impact of book reading in general, not the intervention, but general book reading with children on later life outcomes, particularly the children's academic achievement when they're at school and they need to have those literacy skills in order to meet the literacy demands of their subjects. And what we found was that children, and we looked at this with a large sample of children from the longitudinal study of Australian children, and there were 3,547 participants. And what we found was that children who were read to during infancy had stronger language, literacy, and numeracy skills when they were in grade 3, and that this continued up until grade 5, where the children continued to have stronger language and literacy skills. So this really highlighted the importance of book reading with children during infancy. So we took this research and we combined it and we created the StoryBabies website. And what this website provides is free access to all of these materials. There's 5 steps in the StoryBabies website, and each of these steps build upon each other to support caregivers, early childhood educators, teachers, librarians, other health professionals, even other speech pathologists with book reading with children. And these 5 steps, each step will discuss the strategies that are recommended for children at that age, as well as provide video demonstrations and discussions on how to support children with book reading. So what are these 5 steps? What the research show was supportive for helping children to develop and improve their language and social communication skills? Well, the most important thing that we want to achieve while we're reading books with children is to increase their opportunities to interact with us. The more children interact with us, the more opportunities they have to practice the language skills that they've got, to refine the language skills that they've got, and to build upon them. So the way that we can maximize the language learning opportunity while reading is to consider these 5 steps. So the first one is thinking about the best books that we are using for children, and that's because books provide that scaffold, that platform for learning and for reading. So if we use books that create opportunities for children to interact, that's really going to support and strengthen their interaction skills. And this is particularly important for children in that birth to 2 years of age group, because we know that the majority of their interactions will be non-verbal, such as touching the book and lifting the flap sections and turning the page. So we need books that are going to be able to support children to interact, to create that platform for learning. The second step that we need to consider when we're supporting children with book reading is the seating position that we're using while we're reading books, and that's so that we can create opportunities for eye contact and joint attention, which are the foundation for social communication skills. We then consider take turns and teaching, and the focus here is on teaching rather than on testing. So we want to be providing children with language models rather than asking them lots of questions where they don't have the language skills at that point to answer the questions, but rather if we provide them with that language model, we're teaching them what to say. So we really want to be supporting them in the words that we're saying. Then we have the sounds and actions, which builds upon take turns and teach, and it really talks about the different things that we can say and do as the person reading the book with the baby for supporting that baby to interact more and providing that really good language model for them. So we look at different strategies to support you with that. And then, of course, to top it all off, we have the read every day. And that's because we know that we need reading to be a predictable activity so that the child knows what to expect of you, the person reading with them, as well as what's expected of them. And we can only establish this routine if they are read with every single day. And it also creates then those opportunities for learning. So the more that we read with our child, the more opportunities we're giving them to learn language. So we also want to have StoryBabies inclusive of people who speak multiple languages. We don't think that reading is just for families who speak English. We want families who speak multiple languages to read and to write and to talk to their children in the languages that we speak. We know that multilingualism is fantastic, and we want to be supporting and encouraging families to continue to speak with their children and to read with their children in the different languages that they speak. At the moment, StoryBabies is in English, and there is also going to be PDFs of the learning materials in Vietnamese. However, we hope to include many, many more languages, so please stay tuned for that. There will be further information on our website, but we don't just want StoryBabies to only be for speakers of English, but we want it to be available to all families who speak, and educators and librarians and different professionals who speak different languages as well. So, to join the StoryBabies adventure, at the moment we're looking for early childhood educators and early childhood education students who work with babies from birth to 2 years of age, and we have a questionnaire online, and you can see the link to the questionnaire on the slides there. It takes about 10 to 15 minutes to complete, and we would love to know your opinions and practices. We know you're doing fantastic work reading books with children. We already know that early childhood educators do read books with children and that they read for different purposes. We'd like to learn some more about it, and we'd like to learn how we can best support you and how StoryBabies can meet your needs with storybook reading with babies from birth to 2 as well. So please hop on to that link if you are an early childhood educator or early childhood education student. So what's next for StoryBabies? Well, at the moment, we've got the Early Childhood Educator questionnaire. Soon, we're going to have a librarian and library officer questionnaire. And then after that, we're going to be running focus groups for early childhood educators, caregivers, so mothers, fathers, grandparents, nannies, people who are caring for the child every day, as well as speech pathologists. And these focus groups are really going to be on looking at the StoryBabies website and making sure that it is best meeting your needs. So we want StoryBabies to be very much centered around you and how we can best support you with book reading with babies. And that's why it's really important to us that we understand how we can support you with book reading with the children that you read with. And then next year in 2021, we're looking forward to launching the StoryBabies website with all of the materials on the website, including the video demonstrations, PDFs of the learning materials, all freely available for anyone to access. So if you'd like more information, please hop on to www.storybabies.org.au. You can join our mailing list to keep up to date with information and to find out when our website will be launched as well. So thank you for your time. Please feel free to contact me. My contact details are on the screen there if you'd like further information about StoryBabies. You might also like to have a read of the references that I've got here, which outline the evidence behind the StoryBabies website. Thank you for your time and for listening to this presentation, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.